Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the NGF YouTube channel. My name is Andrew. I'm here joined by Dylan of Clash of Cosmos, Clash of Clubs, and Alex Ruiz. Thank you guys so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you guys doing, Dylan? How are you?
You know I'm good. Every time I get to speak with you, I'm always excited and happy. And now that we get to be joined by probably one of the best reporters in the Galaxy sphere, it makes me feel a little bit better. Validates me, I think, a little bit.
It's definitely a big moment. Alex, we've talked, and you're definitely one of the reasons why I started really going for it, chasing, this whole journalism thing, seeing, another fresh face out there in the press box, super inspiring for me. I'm sure you've received a lot of other messages. There's a lot of other kids you've probably inspired out there. I think Dylan has a similar story, but super, super stoked for you to be making your NGF debut, let's call it. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. How are you, Alex?
I'm good, man. Man, you guys are making me sentimental right now. We haven't started talking yet. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. Really excited to talk with you guys. Got a lot of things going on in Galaxy Land right now, a lot of things to discuss. So really excited to be here to talk with you guys. And again, for both of you guys, I really like the content you guys are doing. Andrew, I've known you for some time, man. You keep doing your thing. And Dylan, you and Clash of Cosmos, man, you guys keep killing it. Love watching you guys' content out there. Love listening to you guys whenever I have the chance. So really excited to have this conversation with you.
Appreciate it.
It's a dream to hear that. I think you've made our weeks. So thanks again just for hopping on. But this is an exciting time, like you mentioned, Alex. There's a lot going on. There's a little bit of a break right now that we're starting to maybe come off of. But this kind of first chunk of the 2026 Galaxy season, I remember, back in January, February at the start of this year, there's a lot of excitement, lots of question mark, lots of unknowns about what this team would look like. And now it's starting to end. We have some answers. We have a decent little sample size, a couple of games to talk about, and we can maybe not make some conclusions about this team, but we can start seeing where the dice may start to lie. So that's what we want to do. We want to talk about the state of the Galaxy today. It's gonna be, just the state of everything we have going on, and so it's absolutely a mixed start of the year. There was the first season, the home opener, New York City FC, a 1-1. That looked like it definitely should have been a win. There's that red card, but a strong performance. The first time we get to see players like Glesnes, we get to see Hack, and we get to see this new kind of defense-first Galaxy system. That was kind of the big change when we started that preseason that we were all looking into. Was we have Hack, we have Glesnes, two big defenders. Are we going to be playing with a 3, a 5 at the back maybe? There's a lot of talk about tactical flexibility, and we got to see a little bit of what that defense-first system looks like. The Galaxy changing from having possession, trying to pull off this intricate, beautiful passing, very tiki-taka, Ricky Puig-esque, but it's a big shift from that, and that's, it's a big thing for Greg Vanney. He's been criticized for not making changes, showing, flexibility, and I think understanding of the players he has, and it looked good. There's that next league game in Charlotte, that 3-0, really strong wins. Those games, Central America and CONCACAF Champions Cup, also, strong performances, at least on paper, but it's a good start, but very, very quickly, the cracks starting to show. We see Gabriel Peck get a red card, and we see 2 games back-to-back in the league lost. Some interesting decisions in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, still strong performances, but we've talked about it a lot here on this channel, especially on Clash of Cosmos, but Greg Vanney maybe not preparing the team or making some interesting, questionable decisions, at least in my view, in terms of preparing those games in SKC, preparing the games in Jamaica, preparing the game in Colorado. So just a lot of ups and downs we can talk about. I've kind of laid a little bit some context of that foundation of the year so far. But Alex, you've kind of been front and center. You've had a great view of it, a great view of that preseason as well. What's your kind of take of this first taste of 2026 Galaxy?
I think my general take is just I have no idea what this LA Galaxy team wants to be. Does it want to be great? Does it want to be good? Does it want to be bad? You got to be one of those 3. And right now, I don't know the direction of the LA Galaxy. Right now, they're teetering more towards bad than they are good. Nowhere near elite for sure, but I think for sure before the World Cup break starts, you'll have a good idea of where the Galaxy season is going to lean on right now. Obviously, after maybe the last 3 games, the performances haven't been great. You can obviously tell there's not really any positive momentum for the LA Galaxy at this moment. But yeah, I'm really interested to see just how the Galaxy goes from here on out, obviously Joseph Paintsville will come back to the team. We'll see what kind of extra dimension he can add now that he's healthy again. This upcoming match up against Toluca in CONCACAF Champions League is going to be pretty big. I mean, the game last year where they played in Campeones Cup, I thought it was a great match to watch. I thought you saw real intensity in there, even though the Galaxy were having a horrible season. They put up some fight, and I'm really interested to see what they do in a two-legged series. But honestly, Andrew, I have a lot more questions than I do answers about this Galaxy team. And I'm really hoping that they start to give us those answers right before the World Cup break, because you need to know what you're made of by then. Are you going to be good, bad, or great?
I love that. I think I want to follow that thread a little bit. What those questions that you have, it might be difficult to boil it down to one or two, but if you can, what are maybe some of your biggest questions that have come up after this first batch of games?
For sure, I think the biggest one is, I know you guys have talked about it. Gabriel Pack, is he the guy, right? Is he going to be someone that you can count on as a catalyst week in and week out, or is he just another cog in the system? Obviously, Joao Class has been really great scoring goals. Is this, an outlier stretch, or is this maybe something that he's going to get used to and accustomed to? Because obviously, he doesn't come in with a reputation of being a prolific goal scorer here in MLS. This is maybe the first time in his MLS career that he's had a kind of stretch like this, where you can really say he's been a massive difference maker. And also too, just overall the offense. How does Marco Royce integrate to help this team, flow a bit better? Do we see a bit more Italian explosion? And I think another thing too, as well, another question I have is Novak Mitrovic or JT Martinkowski? What direction is the guy going to go in a goalkeeper? And it's been this question for like 2 years now of who's going to be the goalkeeper. And I think this year you kind of need to have a definitive answer for sure by the end of the before the World Cup break, because you can't do this again for another season. In my opinion, I think that's what derailed last season, is switching back and forth between McCarthy and Mitrovic, kind of losing your voice in the back line during your championship run, switching him with someone else who doesn't have that experience, nor is that vocal leader. Can you really afford to do that again? You already saw what that did last season. So I really, don't understand why we're doing this again. But yeah, those are my major questions that I have.
I think I'm going to piggyback again one more time on your last point. We talked about it last week with the Lacuna Galaxiana boys, Robin and Anda. We talked a lot about Novak Mikovic, JT Marcinkowski. Just to, I think, maybe touch on the very end of that goalkeeper conversation. Alex, if you were Greg Vanney right now and you had to choose between one of the two, JT or JM, which way are you going at this stage?
I mean, just JT for sure. I mean, don't really have much confidence in Novak Mitrovic. He's had multiple opportunities to prove that he can be a guy. You either have it or you don't, right? When a player has that, to live up to the occasion and be that person and take it by, the reins, that position. But I just don't see that, nor do I get that from Novak Mitrovic. Maybe coming here wasn't the right fit for him. But I just feel like the Galaxy backline needs a vocal leader. They need someone who is very decisive with what they do. I think one of my main criticisms with Novak Mitrovic is I feel like his decision making catches him in no man's land very often, whether that's his positioning, whether that's his aggressiveness on set pieces. I think that a weakness of a goalkeeper that's so hard to fix is just the mindset of being aggressive. And I don't get that from Novak Mitrovic. I think from Marcinkowski and John McCarthy from years prior, like, you knew that those guys don't mess around. They stick with their decision, and they're vocal and they're loud. And I just don't get that from Mitrovic. And again, with the back line that's been, upgraded, and there's been a lot of money spent on players there, you kind of want somebody who's watching their six at all time to let them know what's behind them, what needs to happen. And I don't get those kind of vibes from Mitrovic that I do other keepers.
Definitely. It's like having, this great treasure. You spend all this money, like you say, building a great defense, building a great team, but then the lock you pick is just like a piece of string from your shoe that you tied around it. You need to have something a little bit stronger. There's that picture of the hot Cheeto in the door latch. You know what I mean? It kind of feels like that a little bit with Mikovic. So I think, we all had that same consensus. It was JT. But I love that, Alex, questions in the attack, especially who's going to be the one to kind of step up. That's something that I think Dylan and I have talked about. This Galaxy attack, it feels like they're looking towards someone else when really everything should be right there. So I love that. That was a very, very nice little synopsis of 2026. Dylan, I want to pass it over to you. What's your view on this year so far?
Yeah, frustrating. I think that we all came into it with this expectation that whatever happened last year couldn't happen again. But I find myself more often than not thinking of this Galaxy in the same light. And I'm being told as a fan that I should consider what happened at the back end of last year more than I should what happened at the front end. And I don't think that that's how we should view it. I think that we should view it as the entirety of it, which was mostly shit. And we've gone into this portion of the beginning of the year, and now getting to sit on it during the international break, I don't feel much different about this current squad other than one player in particular, or two players in particular, that make me feel that much better than I did last year. And I'm not saying that that can't change. I absolutely think it can, but to Alex's point, I don't think we know what we want to be. And whether you want to accept this year as a gap year or you want to go for it, you can't get stuck in the middle. And the more time that we spend in the middle, the less progress we make in either end of the spectrum there. And so I think that's where I sit with this team, is frustration and confusion.
Yeah.
Which that tends to be pretty much my fandom across all sports right now, is frustration and confusion. And it's kind of a worrying sign.
Definitely.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add from what Dylan said real quick is, if you're a sports team, sports franchise, the last thing you want to be in is a purgatory, where you're not good enough to be elite and where you're not bad enough to be, you know, a bad team where you can fully rebuild and you feel confident in rebuilding, right? You know, you think of in the NFL, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers have kind of been there the last couple of years, where they're good enough to make the playoffs, but are you really seeing any progress? New quarterback every year, new offensive coordinator every year. I mean, the Galaxy, let's be honest. So if you look at the last 5 stretch and you don't include the championship year, it's been purgatory. You don't know what you're getting from the team. You don't really know who's going to be consistent, who's not going to be consistent. And again, if you're looking at the timeline of Greg Vandy as head coach, 1 good year, 4 mediocre ones, maybe you would say, like, that feels like purgatory to me. So I think if you're a Galaxy fan, it's understandable to be frustrated right now, because last season was supposed to be that gap year. Are you going to have another gap year this year? And is that acceptable among the fan base, among the executives of the club? And again, it's going to be a thing, like I said earlier, you're going to be good, bad, or elite. You got to choose one or the other.
I think it's so interesting that we're talking about that so much, this idea of we don't know what we want to be. That's something I associate with like a new project, a coach who's still trying to get to know his players, what they're best suited for. It's not necessarily something you'd ever want to say with a coach in year 5, 6 of a project. Like you mentioned, Alex, last year was supposed to be this rebuild year. Last year was the year to figure out how to play, you know, without Ricky Puig. And to Vanny's credit, I think we have figured that out. We've talked about that defense transformation. You can't play Ricky ball without Ricky Puig, so you have to kind of play a little bit differently. And we, in theory, we've started to shift. Whether or not players get red cards or injuries and we're not allowed to see that version of, again, defense first Vanny ball is a different thing. But to give Vanny's credit there. But again, we're talking about not understanding or not knowing what this team is. That's unacceptable to me at this stage of a project, I feel. And to, again, a little bit to advocate for the FO, I think I do know what this team wants to be. I think we all know what this team wants to be. It's what we all want. It's to be a Ricky Puig-led team. That's, you know, why his contract is for this long. That's what we wanted last year. That's what we wanted, again, at the start of this year. But it just falls apart with Ricky Puig, like his ACL, unfortunately. That was the direction both years in 25 and this year. The FO went into it thinking we want to be Ricky Puig, LA Galaxy. But both years something happens. And so I think it's a little bit more understandable in that context, just a little bit, why there's so much confusion. But at the exact same time, it's year 6 of this project. You can't be confused. You have to know what it is. So both of those things I think are absolutely true. That confusion is there for a valid reason. And you have to start, I think, questioning why there's that confusion. But I think that's a nice little way to wrap up this year. I think maybe just really quickly on my end, I think it's just that idea. What is Greg Vanny up to? How much does he truly know the team? I talked about it a little bit in the introduction, how I've been a little bit unclear or not a big fan of some of his decisions, some of his rotations, because I feel, not necessarily because he didn't do exactly what I would do, and that's wrong. That's obviously not the case. He knows the team more than I do. But that's the thing. My issue is that it doesn't read like a manager who knows the team. An example I love to use is Lucas Sanabria, who has a fantastic game, gets an assist or a hockey assist, has some great forward passing. And each time he does that, he gets benched the next game, where Elijah Winder also maybe started that game didn't maybe necessarily stand out as much as Sanabria, but he starts the next game. I'm kind of wondering what is Vanny seeing in Winder that he's not seeing in Sanabria. He's talked about legs, physicality, being able to drive, but in my eyes, if Sanabria can pass it more consistently, more often than Elijah can dribble through the middle of the pitch, I think that's more valuable. So I'm wondering why he's not prioritized that. I'm wondering why you obligated yourself to play your first team in Jamaica when you walk in with a 3-0 lead. That to me seemed like a misreading of the situation. When you rotated in SKC, I've said this time and time again, you lost points. You rotate in that following game, you lose points. And all of that for a spot, for a game you've already won, that's to me a misreading. So Vanny has a lot of time. He understands his players. I'm not trying to say he's not intelligent. I'm just not, I guess, satisfied with the decisions is the simplest way to put it, but I'm not seeing enough true deep understanding. He's not reading to me like a manager who's been here 6 years. I think it's just my way to put it. So that's my biggest question on the Galaxy this year. I understand the players. I think I know what they are now after this first couple of games, but my question is to coach at this point. Anyway, we've had this ticker at the bottom. I wanted to avoid talking about the negativity. I think I still indulge myself a little bit, but I want to focus more on answering this question of which is our best position. I think we've started laying some clues, some hints as to where we may lie. Alex, you've talked about the attack being your big question mark. I think let's start rating the attack. I guess if you go on a scale of 1 to 10, and I don't want to necessarily, I thought planning the segment we'd go rate each player, but that might take a while. I think let's give me a general rating of the entire attack as a whole on a scale of 1 to 10 right now.
I think I would say maybe 6.5, 7. I think is fair. João Klaus obviously is carrying the majority of that grade, given the goal scoring output he's had. Gabriel Pag's kind of been hot and cold here and there. Obviously, his red card against Colorado is going to come to the forefront for every Galaxy fan, given that game seemed winnable at that time. But yeah, he's been good in CONCACAF Champions League, although it's not been against the best competition. It still matters for something. On that left side, whether it's been Joseph Paintsill or Harper Miller, I really like Harper Miller. I know he's a very raw player, but the kid's fearless. He plays like he wants to make an impression. I think a lot of young players are scared to be noticed, but Harper Miller is the opposite. I think he wants to be noticed. He wants to have the ball, and I think you need if you're going to be an attacking player. You want to be good. You want to show the coaches and teams that you're a threat. You play like him, which is fearless, which is not afraid to show off, his abilities on the ball. But yeah, this grade definitely much depends on what kind of output you're getting from players like Miller or Paintsill. Ruiz has kind of been on and off here and there. He's been good when he started, but he doesn't necessarily have, I guess, maybe the eye test impact you'd expect from someone like Marco Ruiz.
Right. Yeah.
He's not a very dynamic player. He's not, speedy, doesn't really rely on his athleticism. It's more wit. It's more controlling the pace, kind of things in the soccer game that you can't really measure statistically or sometimes kind of hard to notice with the eye test. But I think he's been, a bit above average. But yeah, this
Definitely.
attack, mostly because of João Klaus, is why I kind of give it or lean towards that 7 rating.
Here's a question. We don't have João Klaus. We have a Christian Ramirez, some other striker who isn't playing at that level. What does your rating become?
Easily 4. Easily. It's insane how much a player can, change, especially a good striker.
Well, 4 or
obviously
5
last
goals,
year,
right? Yeah.
obviously last year no Galaxy player really had that stretch. I mean, Christian Ramirez did for a portion last season, but he fell off a cliff. And look, if João Klaus is gone for a period of games, you really start to ask questions. I mean, you didn't even bring up Nascimento. I mean, nobody notices that guy when he plays. So, and again, there's a possibility he might be a permanent deal given some clauses in his loan. But yeah, honestly, if João Klaus was not on this Galaxy team, there's very much a high likelihood you're having 2025 all over again.
So 4-6 in the attack from Alex. Dylan, maybe let's frame it similarly. Or do you have a general rating for the attack? Does that change without Klaus?
No. My answer is a 5. But the reason that, which, if you were in school, that's flunking, right? To put it into perspective, my biggest issue with the attack is our team is reliant on our attack. We have 3 DPs. They are all forwards. If your DPs don't play well and your forwards don't play well, there's no chance that your team can be successful. Just point blank period. That's the way this league works. Your DPs don't hit, you lose. That's like playing blackjack. If you get over 21, you bust. It's the same thing. It's the same principles. And so far, Painsel's been hurt, but before then he was inefficient, is what I'll say. And Peck, outside of CONCACAF Champions Cup, which I'm going to keep going back to the point of like we played inferior competition. I'm happy he scored, but it hasn't translated. And we pay him DP money to play in Major League Soccer, not to play against teams in Jamaica. And I can't remember the other team. Was it
the Panamanian team?
Panamanian. So thank you. Like, and to your point, like Toluca is another test, and I think that for us to be good, Gabriel Peck has to be good. And if I'm being honest, like my season rating so far for him is lower. It's like a 3. But Klaus has been so good that I have to meet somewhere in the middle there and give it a 5. No,
Yeah.
And we've been super critical of Gabriel Peck, and I don't want anyone to think that like I hate Gabriel Peck. I don't. I just expect a higher level from him. And I think if you're benchmarking players on this team, the one guy that we've needed to take the leap has been Gabriel Peck, and he hasn't done that yet. So he's the player that could easily take the leap. And this conversation about attack could go from being a 5 to an 8 pretty quickly. It's just how quickly can he get going? And the early signs are it's going to take a while.
Yeah, and that's very important because, from a marketing standpoint, when it comes to the Galaxy, he's the face of the franchise. Whether you're watching an MLS broadcast, whether you're watching MLS Media Day, whenever the other Galaxy is mentioned, Gabriel Peck's face is right there to promote a game, to promote the team. He is the face of the franchise. You have to perform. You have to be the guy. Gabriel Peck has not been the guy for last year, and this year so far, he's not been near that level at all. I think I wrote a column early in the year saying that the team's going to go as far as Gabriel Peck can go. And that shows. All of the Galaxy's best performances have been when Gabriel Peck is firing, when he's doing things in the attack, when he's able to kind of have that impact, whether that's scoring goals or just being dangerous in general. But when he's not there, when he's making boneheaded decisions like against Colorado, you see the level of the team absolutely fall off a cliff. I don't want to be the type of person who wants to praise my writing and things like that, but I feel like I've hit the nail on the coffin on that specific when it comes to Gabriel Peck, because he is the sole elevator of this team. He's going to raise the ceiling and he's going to drop the team to the floor.
Yeah. I think the issue with that too, like last year, the expectation was the same, but there was almost a little bit of maybe not leniency because he's still ADP. You still have to demand that from Peck, but maybe understanding in terms of his numbers, because it was maybe not unexpected, but just the not having Pooch and maybe not having enough time to rebuild, it kind of understood. It felt like there was maybe a good reason,
like a grace period, maybe. I think that's what
exactly.
The word would be.
And I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. But that grace period has started to expire because it's another year. The conditions are the same. It's not like he can say he's just trying to learn it, figure it out. That he's had a year to do that already. So that question becomes, or the demand, I suppose, to become the guy becomes bigger. And I think it also brings a question to me on like the FO. If they understood that that's what Gabriel Peck is as a supplement, and they wanted to keep him to supplement Gabriel Peck, that's fine. But I'm not, again, just as a DP, you need it to hit. If you understand that he's not going to necessarily, he's not going to necessarily step up, take those reins, be there for those opportunities. Why are you kind of following that? It's just a little bit of a question because these are things that were known. It's not like they're just finding that out this year. They've been known for a while.
Well, I think that if I'm going to give the, Will Kuntz in the front office grace is like, I think everyone expected him to take the leap and he just didn't. And I think that now when you're looking at the summer window and just this whole roster in general, like you have to start to make the tough decisions. And I think that a lot of teams get stuck in this. And this is where you find yourself in purgatory is you think that your value, your players, your assets are better than they are because they've shown you that they can be better than they currently are. And so you get stuck in the idea of like, well, if he just does this or if he just does that. And if my grandma was, had wheels, she'd be a bike. And eventually you have to come to that realization. And look, I'm assuming that the people that are in those positions have started to come to that realization, because if you and me are doing it, then they are probably doing it too. Right. And so we don't know what the summer transfer plan is, but the idea that like they're in talks for a guy like Casemiro, right? Casemiro might cost you DP money. So maybe they're already ahead of this boat and we're just stuck with what we've currently got because there's no window to really attack until after the World Cup.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think that's a valid point. If I'm talking to the FO and they told me that we're waiting for the World Cup, I think as a fan, there's one side where you're like, why? That's a little bit impatient. We need to win now. Every title is a chance. We have to go for it every single year. But you put yourself kind of maybe in a more administrative point. You're looking at this bigger picture. That does begin to make a little bit of sense. But then again, we had the gap year last year. Are you okay with taking 2 gap years? That's tricky.
We didn't know that it was we didn't know that this year could potentially be another gap year until Ricky got hurt. And by that time it was too late. Like if you're playing the window game, we thought that Ricky was going to be here. Like Klaus he was only an option potentially, and it would have been a hard deal. Right? Like the reason that we were able to make a guy like Klaus work was because Ricky got hurt and we had to figure it out right away. Like I guess like that signing's been a home run, right? From the perspective of he's panned out well. Like there's a chance he comes back next year on a TAM deal, but I don't know how much work the front office could have done outside of the acquisitions that they already made. Like let's objectively speaking, what did they miss at all in the window? I don't think they did.
No.
Like if you could point out one player that would be a miss, I guess you could say Hack maybe.
A little too early for that, I'd say. But so far, yeah.
If you had to, yeah.
Question
and that's getting picky, right? Like I'm not saying that because like Hack in Portland was great. I thought he was really good. And I think the last few matches he's been great. So I think that we're just sitting here waiting. And this is part of the blame game. And that's why I called it the blame game on the podcast. Is like we're trying to pick at things to get angry at. And I honestly think it boils down to just a couple of key players at this point. And they just need to step up their level.
That's fair. It makes sense to me. It's just that makes me feel a type of way when it's the same exact situation as last year. It's just yeah.
But it's the same exact the same exact situation because it's the same exact situation. Like Ricky getting hurt towards the back of a window. Like could you have that's lightning striking twice. Like that's just unfortunate. Genuinely. But to your point, like when this summer window comes around and you've got the most lucrative window according to every reporter that has ever been on our show and on X and everywhere on planet Earth is saying this is the window to revolutionize your squad, you have to be a player in that. If you're let's just stretch out this form to the summer window, you have to be a player in that. And the only way to be a player in that window is by getting rid of your DPs. Like we're going to have that conversation when it comes to that point. If it comes
and the front office has to make, very strong evaluations, right? Not think of the nostalgia of winning, 2024, kind of just thinking currently of current form, kind of reminds me of the Chicago Bulls when they had Derrick Rose. Obviously, after his injury, it wasn't the same. You could possibly maybe say the same thing about Ricky Puig. These two similar scenarios that might mirror each other. But yeah, basically the Bulls pretty much came in and were like, yeah, we think Derrick Rose will still be the same player. He wasn't. His game relied on athleticism, same thing as Ricky. Relied on finesse, same thing as Ricky. And he just wasn't the same. Injuries kept coming back. You kind of saw that again with Ricky. So, I mean, is Ricky Puig going to be the Derrick Rose MLS? Who knows? But if you look at how that front office approached the situation, it very much believed that its players could still play at that level when that wasn't the case. Carlos Boozer was getting older, wasn't the same player. Joakim Noah fell off a cliff. I mean, does it sound familiar talking about designated players, right? I mean, a lot of their players out there very fell off a cliff. And the reason why that team and why the Bulls have been so bad ever since then is because that front office didn't prepare for the future. They didn't want to give up that future with Derrick Rose. And, I don't want to be that guy, but, a player with who relies on quick movements coming off 2 ACL surgeries, do you really want to commit to him long term? Same thing with Gabriel Peck, a guy who's proven he can't, really be the guy yet. Joseph Painstill as well. I mean, given his athleticism, if he has more, injuries, can you really rely on him down the future? So as Dylan said, this is going to be the window where a lot of players are seeing American facilities. They're seeing, the American sports culture. They're seeing soccer in the United States through a very different lens. It's not like you're coming in preseason to vacation. Like you're taking it seriously here. So if the Galaxy front office feels compelled and that there's an opportunity to get a, potential world-class player or a player who has qualities that can absolutely help any team in Major League Soccer, you have to do it. how bold is the front office going to be? And that's really my main question. And, my main thing that I kind of am looking through the lens of these next couple of months is how bold is the Galaxy going to be in their decision making? Because I think right now, like we mentioned earlier, you don't want to be stuck in purgatory. And this current formula is purgatory.
Yeah. I think an interesting question there is, what's the track record say? What's the history? Are the Galaxy capable? Might not be the word. I think they are capable, but again, do they have that history of making those bold decisions? I think when fans, at least in general, will have that conversation, I think they would think no, because you see Greg Vanney getting rewarded with that contract extension. Again, the optics of it looked the way it did, but that might lead people to say no. Dylan, I'd like to hear your take on what you expect if the Galaxy FO are, going to be able to make that bold choice, or if we're going to let the opportunity slip. And I'd like to hear from you, Alex, after as well.
It's tough, because my honest opinion is, if you're going to do the shakeup, do it all the way, right? Like, if you're going to blow it up, blow the whole ship up. Don't blow up portion and try to rebuild, because I just don't think that structurally you can do that. Like, if you just remove Gabriel Peck, but you still have Joseph Paintsel, are you like kind of just trying to do the same thing, fitting the same mold, or do you want to structurally change everything? And it's tough to make that decision. And I bet it's difficult for like a guy like Wilkins to try to make that decision in the summer. Like, you're halfway through a season already. You've already made that decision. Most teams make the decision to blow up the ship, in December. They don't try to do that in the summer. It's very rare that you do that. If anything, the summer has always been the additive piece. But going into this new schedule and into this new league where the summer is going to become your rebuilding portion, do you almost get ahead of the curve at that point? And I think that if it gets as bad as it can, that they should do it. And then you go into the summer and you say, we're LA. We'll bring in the best available coach that we can get, and we'll bring in the best 2 available DPs, so long as we can move off of our DPs. And we're rebuilding around the idea of Ricky Puig next season with these 2 new players. Because that's what we did when we won a championship. We brought in 2 new faces along with Ricky Puig, and we won a championship. Most clubs that doesn't work, but I think for the Galaxy it can. Do I expect that to happen? No. I don't expect us to be as poor as we have been. I think that a lot of the shooting yourself in the foot will become resolved, because if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't see us moving past Toluca. And I think that everything gets hyper-focused on the league again, and that'll allow Greg Vanney to stop with the rotation kind of conversation. Whether that's been forced or not, I'm not exactly sure. But once you're one league, you're only focusing on one thing for a consistent period, I expect this team to stop shooting itself in the foot every single week, and they'll pick up wins, because they haven't been bad. Like, I think that the play hasn't been bad, but they've shot themselves in the foot enough times for our record to drop below the Mendoza line.
So you think, basically, just to kind of wrap that up, the Galaxy are going to pick it up, play well enough to let Vanney keep his job and to not prevent that big explosion. That's what you see.
Yes. And then I think that instead of having that conversation in the summer, you have it in December again. I think if in a perfect world, I think that's what they want to do, which I don't agree with, by the way. I think you should have the hard conversation in the summer about where this project's at, because like we've said, for all the reasons.
Let the new manager keep his players.
Yeah, you can't go to a player of real quality. Like, you can't go to a player like Bernardo Silva, right? He was a fab tweet said that MLS clubs are interested. I bet you were one of those players, but you can't actively go and give him a pitch when you can't have a spot for him. So I think that's why you have to have the hard conversation, is because if you want to bring in that level of talent, you need to have a plan. And it just doesn't, I don't know if we have a plan right now. That's my only issue.
Yeah. Alex, what's your read on that? Do you think the Galaxy make the bold move in the summer, or do you think maybe they don't pull that trigger so soon?
If it was from my point of view, I do it in the summer. Obviously, with MLS switching to a summer calendar soon, might as well get used to how you're going to
100%.
operate in those times, right? Obviously, the summer, when you think of world football, is where everything happens. Transfers, where teams are heading out to preseason. It is the perfect opportunity to pick a player. We all know it's so much harder in the winter transfer window to do so, given that teams are a lot more stingier when it comes to giving away players. Can you find replacements in time? And again, it's like a short month window. You can't necessarily be as efficient compared to the summer window. But yeah, I honestly think that the summer window is where you have to attack. But I think this team kind of likes to play it conservatively, whether you like it
Mhm.
or not. I mean, obviously with Joao Klaus, and some moves like Glassness and Hack, those were aggressive, but those were
Yeah.
moves you kind of had to do rather than you took a risk on those players, right? So I think that because of that, what I've seen from the front office lately, I think they're not going to attack the summer window as aggressively as some other MLS clubs might. And I think that's going to be something that could disappoint the fan base and
Mhm.
honestly could disappoint maybe some people within the front office because they want to do moves. We've seen this team be
For
rumored with
sure.
players like Casemiro, but when you look at the MLS math of it, it doesn't really necessarily make a ton of sense unless he wants to take a
Mhm.
massive pay cut, which at his stages of his career, I doubt he wants.
Yeah.
But I think like Dylan said, everything works out for that, sprint season coming up. Basically, just be a glorified preseason for whether it's
For
Vanny or
sure.
another coach. I mean, that's just the perfect time, in my opinion, where you can kind of just blow everything up and kind of potentially blow up the Greg Vanny era if, the Galaxy wanted to be aggressive and do that. But I
Mhm.
just don't think this team will be active in the summer when they should. But again, as we've seen in the last couple of transfer windows, they like to play conservatively, and I think that might be, in the long term things in the objective term of things might be the best way to kind of approach if you want to change, regimes.
Yeah. I love it. I see this ticker at the bottom. I'm changing it now, but uh, it feels like we didn't really talk about who's the most improved or who's not, but we did, I think, have a valuable discussion where we talked a lot about what what we kind of do, I guess, moving forward. We talk about this next stretch of games coming up. We're going to get into, but really beyond that, it feels like make or break time. We talked about it with Rob. He kind of made a similar point that the summer probably is the time to move on from Greg Vanny. Let this new manager get his pick. This World Cup crop. And like you say, Alex, that's a fantastic point. Use that 2020 season to really get his legs under him, get his bearings, those new players to get used to each other, right? Uh, we talk about another like gap year. We're signing up for a third one in a row, maybe. But in that, with everything around it, it kind of makes a little bit more sense in that situation. Or at least it feels a lot easier to take than your best player's knee blowing up twice. So that's kind of this conversation. Do the Galaxy have what it takes? Do they have the cojones to go ahead and do something in the summer? The track record, the people we've talked about the Galaxy week in, week out for the past couple of years, we're not so confident. So it's a totally different system or topic than what we said we were going to talk about. But I think I liked this portion of the conversation just as much. But I think the last thing we should get into, we've done the position ish ratings. I guess no. Let's go back to those position ratings. We
Okay.
started with the attack a little bit. It was a 5 and a 6 or a 4 from Alex and from Dylan there. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and say 5 as well. For me, players doing the heavy lifting are Klaus, but again, Harbert Miller. I think just that bravery in a lot of games, it feels like he can even do better than sometimes our RDPs, which comes down to that bravery, just that decision making. So my attack, I want to give a 5. Quickly, let's go into the midfield. Dylan, what do you think of the Galaxy's midfield so far in 2026 on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, it's so tough because the midfield that I want to see start every game, I would say is like an 8.
Yeah.
But the midfield that I continue to get is not an 8, and it's like a 6. So I'm gonna give it a C. It's a 7. I think it can. This is the one part of the field that has showed me that it can be higher on this list. But
Mm-hmm.
we aren't playing it because we have rotations. Look, I love Marco Royce. We've been big advocates for him on the podcast, and I think that he can play a huge role. But through this early stretch of the season, I think you need to go with what has worked and then eventually you can play around with that later.
Mm.
But Greg Vanney he's insistent on playing Marco Reus in every MLS match and playing him big minutes, and so that has to drop your rating. And so this goes to my confusion point. I want to say it's higher than it is because I think that this is a good midfield. I just think that it's not being utilized correctly, and maybe that's a Greg Vanney minus to his rating. So I'll stick with the 7 for now.
Okay. I feel like we're starting to come up against this idea. There's like an ideal rating, what we know this team can be, what we imagine or at least fantasize with this position, and then there's what we're actually getting. It kind of feels like that with players as well. But so I think, Alex, let's go ahead and talk about that. Do you have like, what's your fantasy, or I guess when it's right, when things are ticking, what's your midfield rating? When things are not ticking, when it's wrong, what's your midfield rating?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Dylan said there. It's just the rotation is just so hard to make it to make a good evaluation of the midfield, having many different lineup combos, many partnerships there. I think Marco Reus has been quality when he's shown it. Obviously, a lot of people might not see it, but I think having a player like him is very important on a team that, I think can play emotionally. And I think Marco Reus has a very mature play style that very much helps his team not lose itself in the attack. Seeing Cerrillo and Sanabria and Winder, it feels like a very redundant type of play style. But when you see them all three there and no Marco Reus, you kind of see just, having the pivot and the box-to-box guys who can cover ground. I think that gets the best out of the LA Galaxy. I think that probably, you might suffer a little bit creatively, but you're getting more athleticism, you're getting more aggressiveness. And I think the team just needs more of that because it seems to be very patient, very methodical, but not very, sharp. And I think they add a bit more sharpness. They add a little bit more threat with their athleticism. But yeah, I think the midfield, if they're able to find a good combination and, stick to it, it can, really help everyone else around themselves. But that lack of continuity, I think, is the biggest issue for this team for both the attack and the defense, because you have a lot of different players who operate in different ways and rotate differently, where it causes confusion. And I think you guys see that manifest in games.
Yeah, I like it. The way you worded that almost led me thinking, it sounds like this is maybe one of the positions with less need to improve. But I think that might be the last position, the defense. Dylan, what's your rating for the 2026 LA Galaxy defense?
It's funny because it's obviously been our most improved position group. And I actually think that our best position group is our wingbacks and our fullbacks. My most improved player so far this season has been Julian Aude. I think there's been a definite maturity in his game, and his ability to play the left-sided center back has allowed the Galaxy to do a little more fundamentally, which I didn't think was part of his game. I thought that he was a full-on wing back. Like, you're going to see him playing almost like a left winger. But with that being said, some of the things that have plagued this team so far this season have been moments of lapse, and that usually comes down to Emilio Garces, and he drops the rating. That's been the storyline to every single position group, is I feel like one player is dragging down the rest of the rating a little bit. And I'm actually going to make this my highest position group, and I'm going to go with an 8, because I think that the only time that we have been poor defensively is when we've been down a man and when we've played in transition. And both of those things you can actually work around. Like, just don't get red cards, right? That's a first one. And then secondly, transitions are just about learning the system, and we've implemented a new system this year, that 4-4-2 into the 3-2-5 shape. And so it's just about them becoming more comfortable with that. I will also preface this entire point with, it's not the same if Glesnes isn't playing.
Yeah.
Right? He almost on his own jumps your rating by 3, in my opinion. He's that good. He's that level. So I'm going to go with an 8.
That feels kind of similar to Klaus on the other end of the pitch, right?
Yep.
Someone just dragging that score all the way up. Alex, does that sound similar to what you're thinking?
Yeah, if we're talking about the transition to the defense, I think pretty much it's like there's some good foundations here, obviously with Glesnes being added there. I really like Hack as a center back. I never liked him as a midfielder. I thought, he elevated his game as a center back with New York City, and that's why he was a very lucrative free agent. Not playing as a holding midfielder, playing as a 6, as a center back in a back 3. Which, we've kind of seen with, as Dylan mentioned, Julian Aude kind of playing as that left-sided center back. I'm very conflicted on that because I do believe Julian Aude's best part of his game is his attack, his dribbling, and his ability to beat people like that. I don't know if playing, him at center back is good, but if you do need some ball progression, then you do have it there with Aude, which is something that's pretty good to have in your center backs, especially when you need to break some lines. But I think that's been a very interesting development with the LA Galaxy this year. But yeah, you kind of want to see players like Dylan mentioned, Miro Garces really start to kind of there's a lot of potential talk, very much reminiscent of the Efrain Alvarez
Mhm.
days where all the potential in the
Yeah.
world, a lot of these things that he can be a really great player, but he just never found it. I mean, is Emilio Garcia going to be the next Efrain Alvarez where, you see it there, you see the physical tools, you see everything that you would want in a center back that can dominate, but mentally it's just a lapse behind. But yeah, I just want to see the development of the back line because, for me, when you signed Justin Hack, that very much signals playing a back three because he excelled as a back three center back. The Galaxy have always played with a back three building out like that, right? And with Justin
Mhm.
Hack, because he's a hybrid of playing as a six, you can move him a little bit higher, right? I think the one thing Greg Vanny doesn't like about a back three is playing three center backs, just pure center
Mhm.
backs. But again, Justin Hack isn't a pure center back. He can play as that six.
Right.
So for me, I think once the Galaxy play in a back three with Hack and two other center backs, I think you might see a little bit better play. That's honestly what I want to see, to be honest. Obviously, Greg Manny knows the team better than I do, but if I had a day to be in his body and tinker things and make a change, that's what I would do. Is just play a back three, put Hack in there, take out, put him on as a left wing back. And again, you still have the ball progression with Hack. I think against Portland, you saw some of those moments where he can progress the ball a little bit, where he can have a little bit of finesse with the ball. So I really kind of just want to see how this team develops over the next couple of months because there's bound to be some major change if the team wants to either be really good or go all the way down and sink.
Yeah.
Alex, to that question of formation, so if you end up playing that three back, right? So I'm assuming
Mhm.
it's Hack, Yoshida, and Glesnes, or Garces for Yoshida, one or the other.
Yeah,
Who's your midfield two in that sense? Just out of curiosity.
I think it's going to be Cerrillo and Sanabria.
Okay.
I think Cerrillo is very much a calm presence, very much someone who can, add a little bit of tempo. And he's, again, used to a very high volume of touches. You can see ever since he joined the Galaxy, just the amount of times he touches the ball
Mhm.
just goes
Yeah.
up another level. And he's comfortable with that. You've seen that. Again, he's not spectacular with the ball when it comes to ball progression, but he's comfortable having the ball in those moments. And I really like Lucas Sanabria as a box crashing number 8. I think that's where he excels. He scores his goals like that. He kind of has that physical hunch to win back balls like that. And I really do think that that's kind of where you can see him excel as well. Or if you kind of, well, again, we don't have to play this formation game because we're all kind of playing pretends in our heads right now. But personally,
Right.
maybe that's for another episode, another time where we can discuss that because we can
Yeah.
definitely have a 2 hour long conversation about that.
True.
Yeah, but in my mind, that's kind of what I would want to see in the midfield. A guy who's okay being a deep lying playmaker and then, box to box, ball crashing midfielder that I see in Lucas Sanabria.
Okay, I agree. I was just curious if we were on the same wavelength there.
Yeah. All in all, it sounds like in all three positions, it's kind of a similar position, I guess, to use the same word. In attack and defense, especially, you've got kind of one main figurehead, really, and then someone kind of bringing things down. Maybe Gabriel Peck, Joseph Paintsel up top. You look at maybe Garces in the back, and in the defense, in the middle. Again, it's like there's potential to be amazing, but we're not seeing it for maybe different reasons. Maybe less to do with the players themselves, maybe more to do with decisions. But it's just all the way around feels like mid when there's potential and there's talent for great, which is just interesting. I think how I want to wrap up this section is what is the position that needs the most improvement in maybe this summer window or the windows moving forward of the three, which is the one that worries you the most right now. Let's go ahead and start with Alex, I think.
I think for me, this is my opinion, just my personal opinion. Like, I feel like if you're the Galaxy, you can have to find a way to move on from Joseph Paintsel. I just think his game is very much predicated on athleticism and kind of those physical attributes. I think as a player, he has plateaued in his time with the LA Galaxy. You can very much tell he's a player that needs to be on moving at full speed. He's not a guy who can kind of play against with teams against the low block because he's not built for that. You see him slowing down attacks. You see him kind of not being as comfortable when he has to be more intricate and in tighter spaces. So that would be where I would upgrade on that left-hand side because I don't really have that full confidence in Joseph Paintsville kind of being able to do this maybe again for another, 2 years, I'd say. I think that's the timeline, a
Right.
respectable timeline. So that would kind of be where I would make the change because, getting a left-sided, attacking DP to complement Peck and complement whoever else is, playing striker, whether that's Klaus in the future or someone else. I just think that's the DP spot where you have to make the change.
Yeah, that kind of aligns with what, especially both of you guys have been talking about. This idea that the the DP attacking DPs is where you start kind of that blow up, that foundation. Dylan, do you have a similar read? Do you think the attack is where you prioritize the summer, or is there another position that worries you a bit more?
No, it is the attack. And I think that we've all kind of mentioned that within our ratings. Like our ratings, the lowest place was the attack. So it should go to that category. I will say that I'm not ready to give up on Joseph Paintsel, but that's because I love him and he's probably my favorite player. And there's some nostalgia there where I'm just like as much as I don't give him enough crap, he should get crap because he hasn't been as good as he was, similar to Gabriel Peck. The standard should be the same. But I'm actually going to pose this in the idea that I think the easy upgrade, the simple upgrade, is just moving off a Nascimento and bringing in a U22 winger that can compete alongside Joseph Paintsel and Gabriel Peck. Because that's been my biggest issue is I want to be like, you know what? Peck needs a minute on the bench here, or Paintsel needs to see bench for a little bit. Who are you replacing him with? Like Eric Tommy just isn't of the level of either of those guys. He shouldn't be in that conversation. And then Harper Miller is let's be honest, he's a right back playing left winger. Or if Cuevas is doing that's the same thing. Like they just don't provide the same amount of quality. And the U22 spots, similar to the DPs, like you have to hit on them to a certain extent. I see Sanabria taking a starting 11 spot by the time the season is over. Obviously, Aude is already in a starting spot. So you've hit on two of the three. But that third one, if Nascimento is only getting cameos, what's the point? He needs to be able to compete for a spot. And Klaus has clearly proven that he's the starting 9. He's the guy that all the minutes are going to funnel to. And like I said, if you lose out on Toluca, Klaus is starting every game. He's probably playing close to full 90s. And Nascimento's minutes gone. So it's much easier to fill the time requirements and the amount of minutes that you can fill in the winger positions, because those guys have proven through multiple 90s that maybe they're not on their day and they need a sub, but we haven't had a sub to give it to them. So I'm going to say a backup U22 winger. That's the one spot.
Again, we all forgot about Nascimento. Again, he just doesn't really fall into the equation. I don't see a future with Nascimento. Yeah, I don't see a future with him. I really wasn't convinced last season when you had him for the whole year. Less so this year. And again, like you mentioned, Dylan, those U22 spots are very valuable. And again, those can be kind of like the hit or miss, most risky spots to kind of take that risk on players. But if you hit big time. And again, Nascimento just hasn't been a hit. And I think it would be very much a good idea to kind of look for another winger, another, profile of that with U22, because if what you're getting from Nascimento right now is what you would get from a backup MLS journeyman striker. And again,
it's what we got out of Barry last season. Like it's the same thing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And you're using a valuable spot on that. And Klaus is proven right now at the moment to be a high quality starting MLS caliber player. So what's the point in using, two very valuable spots on a position where you already have one player performing at an above average level?
Andrew, where's the spot that are you also in that same thought process of forward line needs some reshuffling?
I definitely think that has to be the number one. I think you guys laid it out great. It's mainly because all of our kind of more weighted positions are in the attack. Our DPs or U22s, those are the ones that have to hit. And right now it's kind of strike. None of those have really hit. So that obviously has to be, I feel, what you have to do first. But for me, another one of these major holes that we're starting to fill, but still definitely I think needs some depth, is that loss of Mark Delgado and I guess Tom Brugman in 2024. We introduced, there was Edwin Cerrillo, who went from taking almost like even an understudy but a supplemental role to being the guy in the midfield. And then we brought in Elijah Young, two super young players, Elijah Winder, Lucas Sanabria, who in that 25 season were especially super raw. And we saw what that hole in the midfield looked like. And it looks better now, but it's not necessarily any deeper. You can maybe say you have Tommy there who could play kind of in that. He's playing in a midfielder winger-ish role. You could say you can throw Hack in there, but we've all talked about how we don't like that. there's kind of the same limited. We've talked about it. There's this one midfield that we really like, but then after that, it starts to take a dip. And we talk about these competitions. We typically don't play in just the MLS like we may do in just a couple of weeks. We are usually in 2-3 competitions. So that depth, I think, in that midfield becomes so important. You can't have such a steep cliff, I don't think. So I think that's, to me, another position that I've been wanting to see filled again since the end of 2024, that we brought some young kids in. They've matured a little bit, but they still feels like they need their own veteran presence. Yes, Edwin Cerrillo, we've talked about a lot. He has stepped up, and he has become a leader, especially in that midfield. But, you need Marco Reus, a great veteran, a great leader, but you need to combine that leadership with that energy. You need to actually be in all these places to midfield. You need to pop up in a defense to make tackles. You need to pop up, make that crashing run like Alex mentioned in the attack. You have to be there to support. Marco Reus gives us one of it. Edwin Cerrillo maybe gives us another. Lucas Sanabria, he is a glue guy. I want to see another glue guy. Again, I go back to 2024. We had that Mark Delgado, Gaston Brugman. They both kind of fulfilled those roles. Maybe Gaston a little bit deeper, but also fantastic with the forward passing as well. Again, really similar to Lucas Sanabria. So I want to see kind of a double there. I need a second link to come in for Lucas Sanabria, kind of help him out.
I feel like that's fair too, because when we talk about Winder, and I think what made me really angry last year was the amount of hate that he got for a player that wasn't supposed to have to take that leap, but was being asked to do it. And I think you can even extend that into this year. Like, he is a USL player who is now in his second full season of MLS play. And that's a difficult jump. Like, there's not many players that do that route that can do it, to a good job. Like, and the fact that Greg Vanney has identified him as a starter within this roster is honestly very impressive. And it should be seen as impressive. Like, Elijah Winder was not supposed to be a starter within the five. Realistically, within the 2 or 3 year plan, he probably wasn't a starter for you. But the idea that he is, to your point, it could signify the idea that you should be in the market for another midfielder.
Yeah, I think I'll add to that real quick. Is same thing with Sanabria as with Winder. Is they're project players. Like, the team signed them to be here for 3, 4, 5 years, not here for just 2 years, right? Players like Delgado and Brugman were already made products. They already finished products, past their development. They were in their primes. Right now with Sanabria and with Winder, they're project players. And like Dylan mentioned, I don't really think, Winder being a out and out starter every week was on the cards for year 2. So again, it's kind of that patience game, but how long can you play that game? And I think that's the real question that I think everybody's trying to find the answer for.
Man. Okay. We've talked about the defense. We've talked about the attack. We've talked about the midfield. We've talked about what we want to see come in. We've kind of talked about what we've seen so far this year, what we want to see in the future. So let's kind of bring it to maybe the more immediate future. We've been talking a lot about the summer, but coming up this Saturday, we have a game against Minnesota United. Not quite at the very end yet, but Minnesota United, I guess I don't have that. But we're going to let's do a little quick preview. They've recently, they've had the services for a little bit now, but they're really starting to enjoy the services of James. Got his first a couple of minutes in Minnesota's last game, has played for Colombia. It feels like he's going to be ready to make his start against the LA Galaxy. Minnesota, another team kind of languishing in the middle bottom of the Western Conference, similar position to the LA Galaxy. A couple of interesting games last year, the 2-2 on the road. I think probably one of the best results, one of the only times the Galaxy took points on the road was against Minnesota. And that was in a time when United were looking really good. Now Minnesota have a new coach. It feels like they're rebuilding a lot. They've shipped off a lot of big name players. It's a different Minnesota United than what the Galaxy saw last year, and it's a different LA Galaxy now. The Galaxy are going to have, like we've mentioned, Joseph Paintsel back. Hopefully, a more rested version of Gabriel Peck. We won't have Glesnes. Yoshida hopefully should be recovering. He played a lot of minutes, but he should be ready to play. Garces fully back from his knock. He's had some minutes as well. Besides the major injuries, both sides, relatively healthy. Again, James in for Minnesota. We got those changes in Minnesota, these changes in the LA Galaxy. What are we expecting for this clash? Dylan, let's go ahead and start with you. Just a quick couple word on Minnesota versus LA Galaxy.
Goals. Goals. They have been one of the worst defensive teams in the league this season. So I'd like to see us score some goals. It's a home game. I think I've said it for like the last 3 or 4 previews, but I'd like to see Gabriel Peck maybe score. Look, Minnesota, they always pose problems. They just are one of those teams that can kind of get up for any match. But at home against a team that's struggling, we're struggling. I would argue we need it more than they do, just based off of their project and where they're at. Hama's coming back from an international break. I don't know where he's at. That whole move was so that he could be fresh enough for Colombia, right? So I don't know how many minutes he'll get. I don't know really where his status is at within the team. So I'd like to see us go in there and take care of business. I think that if they play defensively the same as they did against Portland, we'll be all right. But I'd like to see us go to stuff that works. And the worst part is I know that we're going to trot out a rotated lineup because you got Toluca coming up, and Greg has told us that he's going to rotate. And that's a little disappointing. So I don't really know how to feel about this match. It's similar to the entire season. I am confused. But I'd like to see us score some goals. Like if this could be the game where you start to break out. I'm hoping that Paintsel is back. I don't know if we've gotten any word on that, and I don't know when the next media availability is.
It's going to be on Thursday. So by Thursday, we should know his status for this weekend.
So fingers crossed that Joseph Paintsel is back, because I think that having both of them back and getting them firing at the same time could be the thing that kickstarts the season. But it's got to start now, right? So like if you don't get off, I think someone asked us in the podcast, like if they don't win this match, like is it, or are we like, what are we doing type of thing?
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, but I'd like to see us get it kickstarted here. So I guess that's my mini preview.
Yeah, before I dish it over to you, Alex, I like that point, Dylan. Sorry, no, it just left me. But the attack kind of having this opportunity to really, really strike or show, get some of those goals like you mentioned. And like you also mentioned, Minnesota, one of the weakest defense in the leagues. Especially with Gabriel Peck, the conversation is he can do it against these weaker sides, specifically in CONCACAF Champions Cup, but can he do it in the MLS? This feels like one of those better opportunities to pick up a goal, an assist or two, especially if Joseph Paintsel can get on that as well. It feels like this is the game. And if you can't do it against this type of opposition with that kind of context around them, I think it brings up even more questions. Alex, what do you think of all of that? And what's your thoughts on this coming game with Minnesota?
Yeah, I think this game against Minnesota is just one where you kind of want to see some progress, and it's going to be hard to kind of evaluate given that we're more than likely going to see a rotated lineup, or if we do see a full strength lineup, it's not going to be for the full 90 minutes. So I think any type of win will be good, whether that's a 3-0 like what happened with Charlotte or a 1-0 grind out game. No matter what kind of victory it is, it's going to be great for the momentum of the team. But if you're seeing a Galaxy team that's struggling to create chances again, a team that can easily get broken down, then yeah, the alarm bells are going to start ringing, I think, for everybody, because, we all expect progress and, teams to improve to be linear, where it's every week you're seeing something, improve, someone get better, a tactic that might tweak some things. But if you're not seeing it at this point, I mean, what kind of hope do you have for the rest of the year? And that's going to kind of change the direction of how everyone views the LA Galaxy as a team that, they might have it to a team that probably doesn't have it. And again, that's just going to be one of those things where, we might forget about this game later down the line, but you never know where we might be like, oh yeah, this was the game where we realized that this team just didn't have it and it was going to be another lost year. So, I don't want to put too much weight on just one regular season game, but the impression that you get out of it is going to very much dictate how you're going to view the rest of this busy April month.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like it's a litmus test, for this month, which, like you mentioned, is super busy. But again, to kind of just reword what you said, it's a litmus test for the rest of the year. It's a good opportunity for the Galaxy to show what they maybe can be. Again, even if it is a rotated Galaxy squad, they should probably have this, again, reformed new Minnesota team. They should have their number. They should be able to pull that through to their numbers aren't too impressive as well. But to get something against one of the weaker MLS teams, and if they don't do that, again, it becomes big questions. So this game against Minnesota, like you mentioned, Dylan, it's not quite, turn on the fire alarms if we lose, but you start maybe losing the last little bits of hope and excitement that maybe are still lingering from the preseason.
Yeah.
So it's a frustrating. You've used that word a lot, Dylan. It's been a frustrating start to the season. It's been a confusing start to the season, to your idea, Alex. And I guess if I want to add my one word, it's an underwhelming start to the season, because there was so much potential. It felt like we all, I think, maybe just wanting it so badly is something so even just different from 2025. And again, I think of the scene from Nacho Libre where they get served the same beans every single day. It's like, why can't we ever just have a salad? At least something different to talk about. You know what I mean? It's the same situation and lots of similar problems. Dylan, Alex, thank you guys for spending the last hour talking about the start of this year and just everything, the state of the Galaxy. Let's go back to the top of the episode. But thank you guys for breaking it down with me. I really, really appreciate it. For the first time on the NGF channel, Alex, please let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my coverage of the LA Galaxy on galactictribune.org, and you can also find me on Twitter /X at ALXRuiz15. And again, thank you guys for having me. Really enjoyed talking with you guys. I really love just what you're doing, Andrew. I think this is a really great space to just talk about things, spitball ideas, spitball, things like that. So yeah, I really appreciate this conversation with you guys, and I had a blast.
I love it. It's so cool to hear. It's fun, I think, to share these conversations. And with you especially, you have such a really unique look on everything. This Galaxy team especially. So again, thanks again for hopping on, sharing your time, sharing your insight. We definitely appreciate it. One last thing I'll ask of you is, where can the people find your video content? I know that's something that's been a little bit new. Where can they look out for that?
Yeah, so I started getting back to just uploading soccer videos on TikTok, just voiceover with some analysis kind of thing. Just if you're interested in like soccer in general, it can be LA Galaxy or just CONCACAF as a whole. But yeah, you can find that at alxr.footy on TikTok. So yeah, trying to get more consistent on there. And yeah, just let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see on there. And if you're bored at 3 a.m, that's definitely somewhere you should check to watch videos.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic Doom Scroll recommendation. Dylan, another fantastic Doom Scroll recommendation on COC. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know it. If you've seen Andrew's work, you've probably seen his work on our show, which is Clash of Cosmos. We talk about the Galaxy. And like I say in every video, we are fans. And I'm going to speak to you as a fan, from one fan to another. And you might disagree with me, but I'd like to hear about it. So I think the one thing that I want to hear is more from our community and telling us if we're idiots or not, which is totally fine. If you think I'm an idiot, like, I'm cool with it. Just let's have the back and forth. For this video and the stuff you're doing great work. And I love being a part of the seminars. Alex, it was super cool getting to talk to you and meet you for the first time. Anybody that needs like more of an analytical spin on the LA Galaxy, I think you do a great job of covering it in that way. And I don't think there's any other reporter that really does that. So shout out to you. For the rest of the COC Network stuff, you've heard it a million times. COC Network on social media and YouTube. And just follow Andrew's page. This dude's putting out awesome content and bringing people together. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be subscribed to this channel, because I don't think I know a channel that is bringing this many Galaxy creators together in the way that you are. So shout out to you, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew, you should be solving world peace right now. We need you right now. We need you.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, all I'm doing is making a space for conversation. It's a power of conversation, baby. Getting together. Check out the last Galactic Seminar if you want to learn more about that, organizing and getting people together. But that's what the Galactic Seminar is all about, is to share these ideas, to go on these tangents that maybe Alex and I don't get to on our word limit with our articles, or Dylan on his videos, because he's got to keep it to like a minute 30. This is where we, kind of let the word vomit spit. We appreciate you guys joining. As for myself, you're here on the NGF YouTube channel, but we're also on Twitter at NGF Andrew, Instagram, Nuestra Galaxia Fútbolera, and you can find the written word every week on Los Angeles Sports Nation. We'll have our articles there. Feel free to subscribe there, get it straight to your inbox. We'll have some more articles, and we'll be doing some more Socratic seminars based on these articles as we get back into the match schedule. But thank you guys so much for following along with Dylan, with Alex, with I. Thank you, boys, again for sharing your time. It's been a pleasure. Like we said last week, go walk in power, walk with kindness, and hopefully the Galaxy can walk with a little bit more confidence onto the pitch on Saturday. We'll be talking about it. Thank you, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you on COC and NGF.